Toyota, of course, will hybridize almost anything in its line if you give them enough time. And you might think that this Highlander Hybrid is just basically a Highlander with some Prius technology grafted, but it's actually quite different. Let's drive this 2014 Highlander Limited Platinum, all-wheel drive and highly electrified, and check the tech. Now, if you haven't seen a Highlander lately, hybrid or otherwise, you haven't seen a Highlander. They've done quite a bit of plastic surgery on it for this very fresh third edition, and as you can see, it's gotten a lot less boxy and square-shouldered than it used to be. That's part of the big trend in its category. If it looks bigger, that's largely an optical illusion by them drawing the lines lengthwise, although it is about 2 inches longer, but that's not really meaningful. Wheelbase is about the same as it was before. Seats 8, they tell me. Now, I counted 7, unless there's a different back seat option, or someone's got to sit on that little cup rack, and that doesn't sound comfortable. And one of the big headlines on this car is no longer that it's a hybrid. That's not even exotic anymore. But this is a very different hybrid, as we're going to find out, with not 1, not 2, but 3 electric motors. Now, the first thing you're going to notice inside the Highlander Hybrid, the new Highlander in general, is this package tray. It's basically a stuff tray for your mobiles and such. I admire the idea, finally giving us a shelf to put things. Not a lot of cars do this. Unfortunately, you know how much crap your kids are going to put in there? I see this being just like an open sewer. This is what they call a cable management system. All it seems to do is take the mess of a cable and split it between the shelf and the console. I don't call that management, it's just a pass-through. Let's talk about screens. You've got a helper screen here, about a 4-inch. We've seen this before, in between the two, what they call Optitron, very nicely detailed analog gauges. The one on the left gives you your charge, power, and eco swing, pretty common stuff, and your temp. On the right's your speedo and your traditional fuel level. Notice what's missing here. Most hybrids have this huge battery level indicator at all times, showing you how much charge you've got. They kind of make that go away. It's available, it's over here under your home screen, but it's not one that screams at you all the time. It's an interesting piece of psychology to say, look, don't worry about your battery level, worry about how economically you're driving. That does make more sense. Inside this big screen is a lot of proven Toyota technology. It's laid out a little differently. You've got a lot of touch buttons alongside here. They are physical buttons, as you can see, but they don't move. They're just using actual pressure sensitivity. Nothing new in the navigation system to speak of. We've seen that before. Let's go into your audio sources, where you have many. AM and FM with HD radio, XM radio is standard. Your CD above here still have optical disc. iPod USB connector, that's where this snarly mess is down here. Bluetooth streaming, auxiliary jack. You can also play DVDs. 2 particular media apps come in via Entune. It's iHeartRadio for Clear Channel stations and Pandora for predictive internet radio. All of that comes out through what's called a JBL Green Edge amplification system. The speakers around the car, the amps that drive them are all built for efficiency, so they don't tap any more power out of the car's electrical system than they have to. Cohesive and makes sense for a hybrid. Now let's go to the apps. Notice how they make everything an app. It's a little bit of a cheat. I mean, navigation is not an app. It's a function built into the car. Same thing with phone. The more interesting stuff comes over here on the right where you find your Entune array. Mostly things we've seen before. Bing, iHeartRadio, Pandora, OpenTable, MovieTickets.com, Yelp, and then sports and stocks from satellite radio that you probably don't care about. Traffic is provided by HD radio broadcast, by the way, so even if you let your satellite radio subscription lapse, you should still have good traffic data on the map. Voice command for the Bing search tool is a welcome technology now. Just say what you're looking for, and it'll return results that are navigation-oriented. Now, speaking of the audio system, if you're like me and you still like to grab the volume knob once in a while just to get the sound right where you want it or quickly turn it down, you're going to hate this car. Look at these knobs. Get a side angle there. It's kind of like a round knife edge. There could not be a worse designed knob for the human hand. It's uncomfortable, it's a sharp chrome ring, and it's slippery. What were they thinking? Our backup camera is standard. As you can also hear, are the rear sonar. I like how sharp this one is. It's a wide-angle lens, but not ridiculously so the world behind you is not too distorted. And you've got prediction of direction and distance. But most importantly, you've got really good detail on this screen. So you can make things out with some real precision. You'd be surprised how much that helps. The most interesting technology on this car could be that one, Driver Easy Speak. I've never seen this on a car before. It takes a little bit of your voice from the Bluetooth microphone system and pipes it to the rear speakers of the car. Not real loud, it's not like a PA system, it's more like just a subtle enhancement. So you're not having to yell to the back row and tell them to stop punching each other in the face. You can say, "Hey little darlings, stop punching each other in the face." It also works with the audio system, so it's not fighting it all the time. It's rather nuanced. Now, an unusual story about how this vehicle runs starts here in the engine bay. First of all, you've got a 3.5-liter lean burn V6. Not a terribly powerful beast, although total system horsepower is 280, but that combines a bunch of electric motors. By a bunch, I mean 3. Motor number 1 is primarily a generator and a starter, and it's also part of the ratio control with the CVT gearbox. Motor number 2 is your front-wheel drive traction motor and captures brake energy from the front to go back in the battery. Motor number 3 is on the rear wheels and also captures brake regen from them. Now, while this is a complex and novel arrangement for an all-wheel drive vehicle, it's also rather clean, eliminating a slew of almost Victorian-era drive shafts and transfer cases that other all-wheel drive cars use. Now, we're looking at nearly 4,900 pounds of Highlander here in this hybrid. Hello, big battery, but it still gets up to 60 in 7.2 seconds. That's pretty sprightly. Hello, torque. MPG all-in complete blended system is 2728. Now, driver operation in this car is pretty straightforward. The all-wheel drive system is basically transparent. You're not seeing a bunch of all-wheel drive controls. In fact, basically none. You put this guy in drive or over here on the sports side for shiftability. No paddles on this vehicle, and off you go to the races. You have a couple of buttons up here underneath our cable management. One is called the Eco mode, and that'll bias the car toward more green running, particularly less response on acceleration. And you've got the EV mode, which will bias it another way, which will say run on pure electric as much as you can, given your battery state. Now, jumping in this Highlander doesn't have anything terribly all-wheel drive about it. It doesn't have that sort of rugged off-road DNA. What happens is the vehicle is largely front-wheel drive biased, but can send as much as 50% of total system torque to the rear wheels when needed. But it'll figure that out on its own. That's why they call it all-wheel drive-I. It does the thinking, you do the driving. The overall impression is one of very good linear power. Hybrids tend to do that. Even when you're in eco mode, it doesn't become a non-responsive slug. I like that. And the braking is similarly linear. A lot of hybrids have kind of multi-stage braking between the service brakes and the regen, but this one's a nice linear, smooth application. That's a bit of an achievement. My concern here is that there are a lot of noises I don't like. I get a lot of powertrain noise on acceleration that doesn't become a vehicle like this. When you come to a stop, there's a whole lot of sort of gear noise as the driveline settles or gnashes its teeth or whatever it's doing. And when you turn on the seat coolers, this is the loudest thing I've ever heard in a car that isn't the audio system. If you live in a hot climate, you need to check this out if you test drive one of these cars. I thought I had a window open in the back for like the first 5 minutes I drove this car, till I realized it was the seat fans. Not well done. The lane departure is calibrated pretty well, although it's late by some people's standards. It doesn't come into effect until, in my experience, you're actually on the line, not approaching it. The blind spot tech is very ordinary. It puts a tiny little indicator on the mirror when there's someone in your blind spot, and it's passive like the lane departure. But in sum, it's a nice driver. It knows its role, is what I would say. Okay, let's price our Highlander. We're nearly top of the stack. In fact, we are. Because it's a hybrid, and all hybrids are limited, and we also have added the Platinum package on top of that. We're at just under $51,000 base. The Platinum is about $2,500 of that price and adds the Safety Connect sort of OnStar features, adaptive radar cruise control, the forward collision warning and lane departure warning, automatic high beams, and that very spacious panoramic roof. About the only thing I can find to add to this to make it fully CNET style is remote start, which is an odd factory leave out. It's $500 dealer installed. All in, we're at about $51,400 on this car for a vehicle that is rather heavily revised, has a great new look, a very innovative, ambitious hybrid system, and does some really interesting things inside the cabin to keep the technology high as well as the creature comforts.